everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Articulating with David Barnett. I am your host, Anna Thornton, and with me is my co-host, David Barnett. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Anna.
And we are so excited to be joined for a second time by Jeanne Spicuzza. Welcome, Jeanne. And
also, I hate to interrupt my co-host, but today is Anna's 26th birthday.
Oh, yes.
Happy birthday, Anna.
Thank you,
Happy
David.
birthday, Anna.
That's really sweet. So we're just so excited to film this part 2 of our discussion. Last month we featured a spotlight on one of our ART legacy artists, Sylvia Spicuzza, and Jeanne was kind enough to share her memories and insights into Sylvia's work. But Jeanne is an artist in her own right, in many different creative capacities, as an actress, screenwriter,
The Renaissance woman,
producer, painter, poet, and composer. So we wanted to take the time today to kind of spotlight her creative accomplishments as well. So that's kind of the game plan. I thought we would start with a piece that we have actually here at the gallery. So this piece is titled Metamorphosis. Would you like to tell us about how this piece came about, Jeanne?
I would. And this was actually one of the first times I did use some gouache in this painting, because usually I do a lot of just transparent watercolor, very traditional, but this was kind of a foray into something a little different. I was illustrating an added segment to a poem I wrote called I Climbed Because I Wished to Fly. And that has several images, much smaller ones than this one. This was the large piece that is a companion to those pieces that illustrate the poem itself, titled Metamorphosis. And it was interesting when I was experimenting with this, because David, actually, you were the one who told me, and I did not know this, David knew this apparently, that Francesco, my great uncle, Sylvia's father, Francesco Spicuzza, he was post-impressionist and did portraiture and landscapes, but he was apparently moving towards more abstraction. I did not know that. So I was sort of, I guess, breathing in some of his legacy, perhaps without realizing it, when I created this piece. And so it's watercolor and gouache on paper. And it was quite an interesting experience to work that large. I had never worked that large in watercolor before. And so it was pretty exciting to try to find my way through that, I think.
Yes, so this piece is very more abstract, I guess. It seems like, well, from the title, Metamorphosis, there's a sense of this kind of change going on. Was there a particular change that you kind of had in your mind, or was it more reflecting on change in general?
I think, well, it's funny, like I will start painting, and David will probably relate to this too. All of you may relate to this on some level with the arts, because there's kind of a timelessness. So you start working and you kind of come into the work, and then suddenly you realize 6 or 8 hours have gone by and you have no idea how that even happened. It's sort of this interesting experience that way. And I think I was thinking about things like birth and rebirth. There's sort of this womb-like image in the middle, which is also filled with light. The thing about watercolor is, of course, you can use the paper as part of the white, and you kind of want to accomplish some of that. So that sense that there is this empty space, this light space, this birthing space around which all of this other activity is happening. There's even something that is reminiscent of blood there, and womb-like. And so, yeah, I had a lot of birth and rebirth themes, I think, flowing through me when I created that.
Interesting.
For me, it gives me sort of almost like a metaphor for a cathedral ceiling, like in a, and so where you're talking about falling, it's almost like looking through to the heavens and up to the top, Um,
I love that you said that, David, because the other pieces I was going to say are kind of stained glass like. They're narrower and longer.
which we're going to
so
look
if
at
you
those
imagine-
too.
Yeah, if you imagine the other pieces almost like they're stained glass windows, and this is the ceiling or the Duomo. That's interesting because you can sometimes teach us something as artists about our own work, because I had never considered that, and yet I was very inspired, having studied in Italy, having studied art history, looking up at the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, and looking up at the various cathedral. I think in San Lorenzo in Firenze, there's this beautiful, they would say, the cupola of all the constellations and things like that. I mean, that element is there. That I can see that absolutely. And when you look up at that space, and it almost feels as if it is infinite. It just seems to keep going, and then as the light comes through, yeah, it gives you this sense that it just doesn't have an end, and you feel so small and so big at the same time. It's pretty amazing how those cathedrals were designed.
Yeah, so now we're gonna look at some of the smaller pieces from the series.
Oh wow, oh gosh.
You haven't seen these for a while.
Thank you, David, for being the preserver and keeper of these pieces, because every single one corresponds with different verses in the poem. And really a very powerful experience. The first one was the one that you guys selected to put right in the center. That was the and that has the entire poem written on the back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that has the entire poem written on the back. How I remembered that, I don't know, but I did.
Anna's gonna read it.
Oh, beautiful.
Okay. I climbed because I wished to fly. I left my safe but rocky place and lifted myself high. But when I looked, I saw above, and so I left to climb. I climbed because I wished to fly. I started out to find you, but only saw myself. And so I left my arms and legs and lifted myself high. I saw above and so much more, and so I left to climb. I climbed because I wished to fly. Over rocks my senses leaving, my crawling, striving mind, I glimpsed you, far ahead of me, leaping over trees. I glanced above and saw much more, and so I left to climb. I climbed because I wished to fly. You gave me gifts of little wings, of crowns of silver skies, then dropped me down to teach me why, and see you from inside. I looked within and saw much more of darkness, and I was left to dive. But if I fall, and I then fall, to you or to my death, will I stand and stare here long? I cannot, cold and dying. I love you more than certainty, and see you from inside. And so I wait to make my leap, to fall from empty highs. I cannot know what I will find, but trust in love my life with you. I'll fall because I wish to fly.
Beautiful.
Wow. That is beautiful.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Wow. That's very powerful. And the images are very powerful. And so these watercolors also, I believe there is also, now when I'm trying to remember if I used any gouache in these, I don't think that I did. I think these were,
It's all watercolor.
I think that was all, I think the smaller pieces were exclusively watercolor, and only the large piece I used gouache, some gouache. And the only gouache I used was the green, because I just couldn't quite accomplish the green I wanted to any other way. But these other ones, yeah, that's a good eye, David, because the others are transparent.
All transparent ones.
I love this piece here because you can kind of get a sense of the figure climbing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm curious because this is an illustrated poem. I'm wondering, did the poem come first, or did you have images in your mind, or how does that kind of process feel?
It's an excellent question. It's an excellent question. What happened was the poem came, and immediately after this poem came through me, and I was still living in Milwaukee. In fact, I was still a student of philosophy at the time, and I wrote it I remember I was sitting in my kitchen in October of 1992, and it just came through me. And I was like, wow. And that was interesting because that was the first poem I ever wrote that I knew was a poem. When I was younger, I thought I was writing song lyrics. It just, music never came with it. But that's what I thought. I thought it was maybe like John Lennon or something, and I was writing song lyrics. But that was the first time I ever wrote something and said, oh, I'm a poet. Oh, what do you know? And then after that came through me, I started painting that as I was meditating on the poem. And I did not necessarily have an intention of making an entire illustrated piece out of it. But I started performing the poem, and people were very responsive to it. And I started incorporating visuals into my performances, into performance art. And so I started creating these paintings, and then I would put slides up while I was performing the poem of these images. And then sometimes music would accompany it. That's why it's so interesting to me when, we think about art in categories. But as artists, we don't really do that when we're creating. We just create things, and we don't have these firm walls between one form and another form, from one genre to another, So this it sort of birthed itself in this very interesting way that it became all of these things. Yeah. It's interesting. I know. That's why it's an interesting question, because it kind of like, the poem started, but the visuals came with it to some degree. And then it just kept expanding and becoming more and other things.
Yeah. I love that phrase that you used too, how the poem just came through you. Like it was this kind of outside flow that just spontaneously happened.
Like an inspiration. It just, I was actually almost felt like I was transcribing or something, the way it was coming through me. I was writing it so fast, these little scrawls, and it was just, it's very interesting. Art, there's a reason that the Greeks came up with the muses, to sort of manifest this idea of inspiration, because it is so inspired. It is so inspired. And you never know. Sometimes it's something you see in the world, I've seen mothers carrying their children on buses, and that provokes a poem, or it's something like this where it's really interior. It's so interesting how it can come in so many ways, and in different mediums too. It's so fascinating to me.
I see the behind you, Jeannie, from some of your movies that you produced, The Scarapist, and then the Night Rain, and then but you did another one also about making angels, didn't you?
Yeah, we shot the teaser. Teaser at the Wilshire Ebell Theater, which is this beautiful historical theater in Los Angeles, and that's about art in various forms. There's a visual artist, a poet, a dancer, a novelist. And they sort of all come together. And
so which was the first movie script that you wrote?
The first movie script I ever wrote was Breath of God, about Hildegard von Bingen. And I submitted it to the Nickel Fellowships. It was the very first screenplay I ever wrote in my entire life. And I submitted it to the Nickel Fellowships, and it was a semi-finalist in the Nickels at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences.
Has that film been made yet?
Not yet, no.
Well, we want to do that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we're working towards. All the roads seem to be.
So which movies that you wrote have been produced so far?
So far, I wrote a short titled Field Day, a long short. It was like an 18.5-minute short called Field Day. And then there was The Scarapist and Night Rain. And there's also a featurette that accompanies Night Rain called Dark Redemption, The Making of Night Rain, which I also made.
Okay.
It's kind of a mini documentary.
Are those films available?
Yes, all of them, yes.
Did you ever show them in Milwaukee at the Oriental Theater?
I did The Scarapist, its premiere, after it premiered at the La Femme Film Festival here in Los Angeles. it had a short run, a limited run at the Landmark theaters, and the very first theater it played in was the Oriental.
Oh.
Wow.
Well, maybe we want to have a second run there.
Maybe. And Night Rain, I would love to see play there. It came out during the lockdown, so even though it played at a number of festivals, it got to the point where we had to say, okay, enough festivals, we can't fit any more laurels on our poster. That sounds like a really great problem to have. But Night Rain was really this festival darling that all these places wanted, and it won a lot of awards, and it played at the Martha's Vineyard Women in Film Festival. It was one of 4 selected from around the world, and it played with some very big, I think Marley Matlin or Julie Binoche had a film there. Ours was one of the 4, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So
Jeanne, I'm presenting this as a gift to you.
Oh my God!
Because when you told me about making angels, this is a Sylvia Spicuzza, an original linocut.
Oh my gosh!
Printed in gold, and so Sylvia gave me the original linocut block, and so I produced this. So this is for your birthday.
Thank you. That's so beautiful, David. I could just cry. I bet Sylvia would be so happy.
I know.
I know exactly where I'm going to put it too, because I'm going to put it right. Oh, you can't see this, but I'm putting it where it's right in front of me so I can look at it.
Okay, good.
That is just amazing. And there's a lot going on in there, isn't there? So Making Angels, yes, Making Angels is another feature we're working on. We're working on a series that's a comedy horror series called Vamp Out right now. And you can guess what that's about. And then, of course, Breath of God. So a segment of Breath of God is, this is interesting. The first time this has ever happened, the first and only that I'm aware of, an audio segment from the screenplay is part of the dinner party by Judy Chicago. It's at the Elizabeth Sackler Center for Feminist Art in the Brooklyn Museum. It's on permanent exhibition there as part of the dinner party. That segment from the screenplay Breath of God.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing, yeah. To have an audio segment of a screenplay be on permanent museum exhibition is not something I think has ever happened, and I don't think it's happened.
Fantastic.
I know. Her team reached out to me, and I was like, would you be interested in this accompanying that? And I was like, yeah, that would be great.
Cool.
Without hesitation. So,
can we see that?
Yeah.
Is there a way we could see that?
You mean the dinner party or
the segment that
the segment? The segment is on a CD that I released back in 2001, I think, and it was nominated for a very prestigious audio award called the Golden Headset Award, and it was beaten out by 3 votes to James Earl Jones Reads the New Testament. So I figured if I was going to lose to anything, I thought that, that's fair. So that was pretty good. So the segment that's on permanent exhibition at the Brooklyn Museum is also on this compact disc self-titled. So that's available through our site, through Amazon. And then, of course, this is one of my bucket list items. I have not been in the physical presence yet of this wonderful, iconic work of Judy Chicago, of which my work is included. So I have to make a trip to New York in the not too distant future and actually experience it. There's been a lot of surgence recently with it being Women's History Month.
right.
There was a group called the Alley School. There were 39 women dancers who danced in front of this installation, of which my work is part of. And then there was, I think, another group. I can't remember if it's out of Florida or somewhere else. And they came and they actually hosted an event at the installation. So this is pretty great stuff.
You mentioned one of your screenplays about, was it Hildegard? I believe you
Hildegard
also...
von Bingen, yeah.
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 You did an illustrated book as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was wondering if you could tell us about Hildegard and her story and what prompted you to want to tell her story.
Well, I was working part-time at Radio Doctors in their classical music department, which I know David will remember. Radio Doctors over on 30th
Street.
Yep, that's the one. So I was working there part-time while a student of philosophy. This would have been in the spring of 1990. My manager, who he and his wife would often do various marches for women's rights. He was a real tried and true feminist. And he one day hands me this compact disc. And this is when compact discs were fairly new. Actually, interestingly enough, they're becoming less and now it's all streaming. But compact discs were a fairly new thing. And so the manager hands me this compact disc and he says, "This will interest you. This is a woman composer from the 12th century." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I wonder why I haven't heard of her." And he said, "You of all people should know that, because sadly, often women were kind of left out or minimized." And I took the compact disc home and I was reading the liner notes about Hildegard, that she was a poet, a composer, a visual artist, an herbalist, a playwright. And I thought, "Oh, this is familiar." To me, she kind of gave me permission to be me, I think, and not feel like I had to limit myself. And I was like, wow, the more I read about her. And then I put the compact disc in. The very first piece on that disc is titled "O Quam Mirabilis Est," which means "Oh, how wondrous is." Oh, how wondrous, or when "Oh, how wondrous are." Oh, how wondrous is this creator who foreknew all things. It's like this 2 minute and 46-second a cappella. And I felt like I was being lifted. I really felt as though something powerful, metaphysical was happening. And I had to like hold on to something to keep myself from floating away in ecstasy. And I thought, wow, there is so much to this woman and I need to find out more. And the more I learned, the more I wanted to kind of be with her and be present with her. And finally it was, I've got to make a movie about her and I've got to embody her and incarnate her and bring her through it back into the world on the screen. And so that became a real mission for me, and pretty much what brought me to Los Angeles was Hildegard.
We have to make that movie.
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. Yes. And I think in its time, the interesting thing is, like with all art, it seems it has a time that it wants to be born, like a life of its own, like a child, and so you nurture it and you do everything you can to be present and you allow it that life in a sense. You can't really force it. Like you won't make a plant grow by pulling it up out of the ground. You have to really nurture it and water it and help it to grow that way that it wants to grow. So I feel almost like I'm a steward of that and a purveyor of that, but not all, it's not all on me. There's something deeper happening, that a mystery that happens with art and creation. That's what I love. That's why Making Angels, and the title Making Angels, because you're so close to something so big and powerful when you're creating, it seems. So.
Wow, that's so profound.
Thank you. Yeah, and the title, Breath of God, came from something she said. She described herself. She said the feather flew not because of anything in itself, but because the air bore it along. Thus I am a feather on the breath of God. So those were her words.
That's amazing. I'm going to have to read up on her.
Oh, she's so amazing. I've been to Bingen because David will understand this too. As an artist, I felt that I needed to walk and breathe and viscerally experience her. So I've traveled to Bingen on a number of occasions and walked where she walked. And that's actually how I got that opening monologue, how that happened, because it was like it opens with the thick mists running past ancient castles along the shore, and I with them would rise up to the skies and fly. So I had witnessed that riding on the train out of Bingen in like 6:30, 6:40 in the morning. These beautiful mist like fogs almost that would move through these ancient castles in this wine country, in this Bavarian wine country of Germany. It was really remarkable.
Is that something you do for all of your screenplays, like travel to do research before you write the script and stuff?
Absolutely. When I did Night Rain, which touches on a woman named Elizabeth Short, who tragically was murdered in Los Angeles, it's known as the Black Dahlia murder, and it's never been solved. And so I really felt as though I really embodied her. I would walk where she walked, and I would find out as much as I could about her and try to feel the presence of her. And yeah, I think there's something incarnational about art. I think you really do want to place yourself in front of the subject and with the subject that you want to bring forward. I guess that's how I'd express it. It's a lot. It's a lot of carrying. It's a lot to carry.
Yeah. Well, our next piece on the list you gave us was a poem called Love Is. And this was another illustrated poem. What really struck me about it was kind of the open-endedness of the title, and then the way it ends. It's kind of like you leave the viewer to fill in the blank of what love is. But do you want to talk about that poem a little bit?
Yeah, that was one of those wonderful moments, and I'm sure David will relate to this too, where it's in the middle of the night and all you want to do is sleep, but there's that little muse tapping on your shoulder going, I have something for you. You go, oh no, here we go again. And you get yourself up in the middle of the night and you start writing and you start painting and you start seeing all these very... I saw that too, that this little thing comes up to let you know it's time.
Do you have a moment you want to share, David, about a muse kind of coming to you in the middle of the night?
I think I can't beat what Amy says.
Okay. Well, do you have any other thoughts about Love Is, or shall we move on to another piece?
No, I think, well, the only thing I want to add to that is that book is coming out this year. Oh. And that, interestingly enough, that book came to me many years ago. I want to say around 1995. Was when that book came to me. Sometimes the timing, though, when it comes and then when it's meant to come out, there can be a large space of time. Yeah. So it's very interesting how that happens.
Mm. Well, there is one piece I definitely want to talk about. Hope is My Favorite Color. This is an illustrated storybook, and I just love the story. I found it so endearing. These two blades of grass that kind of have this friendship, and what struck me about it, it kind of reminded me of those ancient Greek kind of origin stories that explore why a thing is the way it is in nature, because your piece is talking about how green, like grass, came to be green, and so I just kind of loved that about it, and I was really surprised just how fond I was of the two blades of grass and just how much emotion you conveyed in the story.
Oh, thank you. That's so wonderful. That's really wonderful to hear, because you hope for that. I mean, I was thinking about that recently, and David, I think you'll relate to this too. I mean, we could create art and it could stay in our homes, but we want to communicate as artists. We're looking to connect. So when you hear that, it's really such a gift, because you think, oh, wow, yes, because creating even images of blades of grass looking angry, how do you make blades of grass look angry or look sad? Or, it's the tilt of like maybe their stem, or, or how pointy they are, or, you try to convey that as best you can, and with color and things like that. So.
Did you ever make blades of grass sing?
I think you could. I think you absolutely could. One of the interesting things too.
Well, now there's a way of holding two blades of grass and making sound
to make
out
the
of it.
sound.
Yeah.
You're right. I'd forgotten that. We do that as kids, don't we, to make that sound? Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's been so long. Oh, thank you for bringing that up, because that's really true.
Sounds a little like a kazoo.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember that now. That sound. Oh gosh. The blades of grass was interesting because I started writing, I wrote the first third of it, and then I wrote the second third of it a year later. I was sick and I was in bed, and this voice was like, write, and I was like, oh no. And it was like, write. I was like, oh no. And write. I was like, okay. So I get up and so I get the last of it except the last line. The last line of Hope is My Favorite Color came while I was reading a book by St. John of the Cross called The Dark Night of the Soul. And in the book, he talks about how red is the color of, what is it? Red is the color of love and charity. Green, blue is the color of truth, and green is the color of hope. And I was like, oh, that's it. The last line. I found the last line. Should I give it away on the podcast, or should we like let people find out for themselves what that last line is? That's when it finally came. It came like a few years later, and I was doing the illustrations. And then while I was working on that, I was invited by a woman named Yvonne, who was working at the Betty Brinn Museum, where you guys are, the Betty Brinn Children's Museum. And they were like, we would love to put this on as a play. And it was the most adorable thing. So all the little kids were wearing like blue and yellow, like little vests that they'd made, that they'd painted. Aww. And then how they created the green. It was the most adorable thing. I just was like sitting in the audience, just like, oh my God, this is amazing. So there's another example of how one art form can inform another and another. It's very fluid. It's a very fluid, mysterious thing.
So we were talking about Hope is My Favorite Color. Were there any final thoughts about that you wanted to add?
I just think it's so interesting, not only how a piece can take a day, a week, a year, years, and it can start as one thing and become something else, or grow from that thing and widen into many things. I think it's very mysterious. There's something about art that you can never quite put your finger on. I mean, you can look at the tangible creation and you can say all kinds of things. And then, like David pointed out, things I had not even thought about myself, but that totally makes sense. That might not have been in my conscious mind, maybe my preconscious mind, but not my conscious mind. And I just find that so fascinating. I'm also fascinated as I look at these pieces. David, when you talked about Francesco, growing into more of getting into abstract work, it's like I just wonder sometimes if he wasn't whispering into me or something, because I never set out to be an abstract artist, particularly with watercolor. I actually started out doing work more like him, doing portraits, doing landscapes, and then I developed into that. So it's just so interesting how you go with this, whatever this voice or this call is that rumbles up from you, and maybe even something beyond you. It's just very interesting. I think that's what makes art so fascinating, is you can't just say it's one thing or this thing or that thing, and you can't really just pin it down to itself. You have to kind of let it be what it is,
Yeah.
And did I read somewhere that this story is being developed into an animated film?
Yeah.
That's
We're working
exciting.
When I picture that, I kind of think of Richard Adams' Watership Down. By the way, Richard Adams' Watership Down was written almost on a dare. Because his children were fascinated by rabbits, and someone said, I bet you can't make a book about rabbits that would be really powerful and have this humanity to it. And he did it. And then it was made into this animated feature. And I always was very impacted by that. I remember watching that when I was younger and thinking, so if I envision Hope is My Favorite Color like an animated movie, it would have those elements, kind of like Watership Down. It would have that kind of humanization or empathy. The characters would carry a certain sensitivity and empathy that we would relate to. It's very interesting. Yeah. I like that idea, though. I can imagine them being animated. And
I can too. They were so expensive. Well, what's on deck for you at the moment? Do you have any new projects that are kind of incubating or?
yes, I've made a decision, a very ambitious one that I've started already, which is to storyboard the screenplay for Making Angels in watercolor. The book, the illustrated book on Hildegard, which was inspired by the screenplay, after I'd completed it, there was a production designer from Germany whom I met with, and he had worked on projects like Minority Report with Tom Cruise, and he looked over my illustrations for the book, and he said, "Do you realize what you did?" And I said, "I made an illustrated book, or I'm working on it." And he's like, "You storyboarded your screenplay." And I was like, "Oh, is that what I did?" I didn't even realize it. And it gave me the idea that it really helps to bring the project into being and convey to your team what you're envisioning and what you would want to see. So I thought, what a great thing to do for Making Angels, and then have it be an illustrated book. So where Breath of God was an illustrated book based on the screenplay that became the storyboarding, in this case, I'm going to do the storyboarding, which will ultimately become the book. So I'm working on that. And I'm also working on a project titled Vamp Out, which is a comedy horror series. It's about Vlad the Impaler, upon whom Dracula is based. Vlad the Impaler of what was known as Wallachia, which is now Romania. And he's 595 years old this year, or he would have been. We imagined that if he were that person living in Romania in modern times, contemporary times, he's so tired of people stealing his life rights and getting his vampire story wrong that he's going to move with his entire family to Hollywood and make a movie about himself. But he can't let on who he is, being a vampire. So he takes on the persona of a cult filmmaker who is subject of a movie by James Franco called The Disaster Artist, and his name is Tommy Wiseau. So that's what Vamp Out is about.
Wow.
Really fun.
That is very exciting. Well, I guess to wrap up, whenever we do artist interviews, I always like to ask the artists what advice they have to aspiring creatives. So what kind of words of wisdom would you like to leave our viewers with about creativity and being
I'm so glad you said that, because I was just thinking about this recently. My advice to artists is don't take advice. Follow your intuition and your inspiration, because, and I'll tell you why. The only person, I always say advice doesn't come with insurance. The only person who has to live with the consequences of your actions really in the most direct way is you. So you want to be very thoughtful. That doesn't mean you don't want to listen to other people's thoughts and feelings about things, but you want to be very in tune to your intuition and your sense of inspiration. That's very important. I think Sylvia would agree, don't you think, David? She would agree with me, because I think she spent much of her life as an artist and as a teacher. And I think Francesca would probably agree too, that it's your voice, finding your voice and finding your light and finding what moves you and finding those deep places and all of those little mysteries, and some of the big ones too. I think it's, as Stephanie Strickland, the poet, once said to me, follow the path that will allow you to grow the most. I always loved that. Follow the path that will allow you to grow the most.
It's a beautiful thing.
Isn't that beautiful? And I think we have to find that. So I think it's important to listen and discern and hear what others share with you. But it's very, very important to nurture your own voice, your own wisdom, your own understanding, and find the trust in that and the faith in that. It's, I think, very important. And I see David nodding because I think he understands that too.
Great way to close.
That is. Thank you, Jeanne.
You're brilliant.
Oh, you guys are just, thank you for bringing things out in me. I get very, as you can see, very passionate. And I think that my family, I think Sylvia, Francesco, and others in my family who were artists in various ways, I think that being around art, and this is the great thing about where you guys are, being around art, I think helps to inspire art, doesn't it? Just being around it, being with it, being in the presence of it, and even just taking yourself into that. So you guys are really living a charmed life over there.
Yeah.
You are. And I just appreciate you guys inviting me not once but twice to like you mentioned, to be able to remember Sylvia and Francesco and David's experiences, to be able to hear and share more about that, and then also to be able to share my own work and feel like maybe there's a bit of a continuance of the Spicuzza, the Spicuzza art and the Spicuzza legacy there.
Yes, very much so. And we're looking forward to your future endeavors and future successes. And we want to be there with you and sharing that with you because you're extremely talented.
And you and all of you, and thank you. That's my joy. Thank you. That gave me great joy. Thank you for that. What a gift. Oh.
Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with us today, Jeanne. And to all of our viewers, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. We're grateful for each one of you. And if you enjoy our content, we would be appreciative if you could like and subscribe. That way you'll never miss a new episode of Articulating. Our next event at the gallery is coming up on April 17th. That is gallery night, and we will be opening our next show, which is called Power of the Poster, which should be pretty exciting. So
we'll have some movie posters too, including one
Great.
with Charlie.
Oh, I like to hear it.
Including one in Spanish with Charlie Chaplin.
Oh, that's going to be great. Oh, he was phenomenal. Yeah, he was a phenomenal artist. He really helped shape motion picture. Yeah. Oh, great, you guys. What a great event. I hope everybody shows up who can possibly make it. Yes.
We do too. Yeah. So I guess that's all for now. And take care, Jeanne, and take care of
Thanks, Jeannie.
Bye.
Thank you, all of you, and thank you, everybody listening. And what a joy this was. Thank you all.